Yeah, so, in the past few years, I've really been sort of cleansed of a lot of, pride that I had. Um, Being more teachable in the past, I was always like very sure that I knew the right thing and other people didn't. Um, in a big philosophical way, I think, or, I would interpret things very particularly and not really do the work to find out, if there's something compelling about someone else's view. I suppose that there was, but at the same time, you know, um, I don't know. I had a way of almost more imagining what the other person meant instead of being properly curious. And I was properly curious, but it's a very subtle thing, a very subtle pride that I've sort of gotten over a little bit. There's just a lot of things too where, for me, I just didn't feel like there's a lot of gold in certain concepts basically, and then I found out I was sort of wrong. Like I was very much like, oh, atheism's dumb, evolution is dumb. Almost. I mean, I still don't really believe in Darwinistic evolution or anything, but I think in general humanity is sort of evolving. I don't think it's macro evolving like that. Maybe a little bit, maybe at some point we could get to the point where we'd evolve to have some different physical structures, like, for example, the Rosicrucians supposedly believe that, we will come to the point where we don't need genitalia, where we reproduce through the voice. I heard that in one video from the channel Vox Occulta. I don't know if that's an accurate picture of what such people believe, but, it's interesting because, at least according to, what's her name? Dolores Cannon. She said that aliens think it's really funny the way we reproduce. And I know she was connected with Freemasons. I mean, Rosicrucians. I don't know what type of Rosicrucians. So there's that. I would also suppose, I don't know this for sure about Freemasons, but Rosicrucians, I strongly suspect Freemasons fraternize with aliens, but Rosicrucians, I think there's enough things like that I've heard about that would it doesn't really make sense from the perspective of, what is it? Just occult philosophy. It makes a lot more sense from the perspective of, talking to aliens. Anyways, back to my point. I guess I wanted to say that the thing with me having a lot of pride, and one of the things I think that really helped me get over pride was making videos and just accepting criticism and making content and accepting criticism and a lot of times snapping back and practically snapping back sometimes quite hard, and quite hard in a very ideological way, not necessarily saying things to demean the person or going to ad hominem or anything of that nature, but just being somewhat severe in my defense of ideas, or sort of Socratically using questions to Trojan horse certain criticisms to people. And I think the funny thing is really shitting on other people has maybe released me from my pride, because I realized certain things, but I think it's funny how many things mentally I actually sort of got to an advanced place, but it took a lot of time for that advancement to trickle down to me in the physical plane and what my thoughts that I'm having, like right at this moment or at any moment. So, I wish I knew more about it so I could sort of integrate it more quickly. Perhaps some study of the Sephiroth could do that, but the thing is, me being a little bit more like sure of myself and overly sure of things as I was, like especially like 2 years ago, year 2 years ago. It was sort of a knee-jerk reaction of me against sort of, because I was brought up to, like my dad especially would be like, be teachable, blah 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 blah, and for me, I have a very hard time interacting with others and just understanding what they mean and not, sort of interpreting their words to a very sort of complex degree, like overthinking what they say to the point where I conclude they mean something that who knows if they actually meant it, or seeing some implication or subconscious quality within their words that picking up on some subconscious quality that probably they are projecting, but like they're not gonna want to hear about it, right? But then I'm seeing it and I kind of want to bring it up, because I see it and I want to use sort of my superpower of intuition. And it's not only the social thing. I also realize that a lot of people just aren't worth listening to. And there's one pastor who meant to mentor me, but he didn't really teach me anything interesting. He was just very flippant, and so I forgot where I left off. But yeah, I know most people like this old guy that wanted to be my mentor. Mostly he just talked about like black people, and he sort of shared this delusion that all races are the same or equal, which I don't believe that, really. I don't believe that one race is like the master race or something like that. I just think that the rhetoric of, we're all the same, is so pervasive. I actually wonder, but wait, are we? Why is it so pervasive? Are people just really, really, really inclined to be racist, and it's just an obvious truth that has to be broadcast to us so much? Maybe, I think that we're made of different stuff, and trying to pretend like we can all come together and be, like Star Trek vibes or something is kind of just not true. I don't really like, it's not an emotionally charged thing. I'm not over here like, I'm not trying to find some excuse to be racist or, I don't hate some other people group. I don't, there's some people groups perhaps I have less compassion for or something. I'm not gonna pretend like, I'm this just enlightened person that cares for all people equally, or something. The tribe is quite natural, but that's a big tangent. Basically, though, it was kind of annoying because a lot of people where I'm from, like old people, race used to be an issue, I guess, and I think a lot of older people are like very uncomfortable around, different races. I heard this from other people too. If anything, I was hearing from other people that like, us as Gen Z, we don't see color. I saw color I saw race because, my grandma taught me about, the different sort of tendencies of different people groups, and I believe that that's a thing, that, some of us just have different proclivities, have different aptitudes. I think my life experience, it makes sense from what my own experience in life, and I'm glad that she kind of turned me on to some, what some people perhaps would consider racism. I don't think it's very good to be in la la land and oh, we're all the same when in fact we're not. Just in that sense. And I think sometimes it's better for different people groups to just be separate, not to be like some kind of apartheid state, or different races can't work together or something like that, but just like in general, perhaps some self-imposed segregation that happened in the past. I believe it was, as far as I know, a lot of it was self-imposed. I'm talking about like Italians and Croatians and Serbs and Bosnians and all sorts of some of these sorts of minorities. I don't know enough about sort of the history of Irish immigrants, and if we talk about like black people the world over, that's basically a different conversation. That's a conversation of how do we account for basically the horrors of colonialism of the past. I don't think we need to address that with some kind of massive white guilt. But yeah. Anyways, so yeah, I was just really annoyed by that, and it wasn't just him either. I also I got into working at factories and figured out pretty early that like a lot of boomers just like to just tell you their life philosophy right off, and are just love to impose that on you first day of work. And I find it at once charming and problematic. And it's sort of a hard thing for me to really like explain my feeling about, because like when I was in the workforce, I like boomers. I think, but I was sort of, I think there's a dark side to this, because I was sort of like this. I went into factories as this sort of kid who never grew up, or who had never really tasted like freedom before or something, and I think I reminded them more of like how they grew up or something, because like just some of the things in my upbringing I think were a little more old-fashioned, or caused me to have like more old-fashioned kinds of ways of viewing the world. Or like for example, when I kind of came to the age where I was a few years away from entering the workforce, my dad showed me how to win friends and influence people, and I think I end up at this point I have enough distance from it where I can say that did affect the way I did things. I at least experimented with it a lot to see, I think it's a little bit of a Freemasonic, I don't know if he was a Freemason, but I think there's this Freemasonic, like, thing of, like, humility and appreciation to it, and, yeah, I think it fucked me up a lot, to be honest. Yeah, but I think boomers really appreciate that. Now I kind of feel like, well, of course they appreciate me. I was basically this, yes man / acting like I was their child or their nephew or something. I really had a weird way about it, and it wasn't necessarily such a good thing. Whatever. We all get by somehow, I guess. But, I wasn't really that focused on maintaining my dignity or anything. And I think that caused that sort of made some wounds, I suppose, that I think didn't heal anytime soon. It wasn't because of them, it was because of others. And I think it just wasn't right for me to sort of accommodate them only, and then say, oh, everything's great because I'm accommodating boomers, and then meanwhile, the other people my age, or a generation, Gen Xers, Gen Yers, the millennials, are sort of hating on me because they had some subconscious sense I'm being manipulative or something, which practically I was. So, that's another thing. I think it's funny because this comes right back around to the topic of pride. I was like, thinking to myself almost like, oh, I'm better than all these people who aren't willing to basically degrade themselves down to nothing so that they can, survive at a company that doesn't give a shit about them. I really believe that, if you work hard and apply yourself or something, that you'll get somewhere. And the thing is I gave it a try for like 2 years, and then after that I was just like, fuck this isn't going. It's not working for me. The other thing is, it's funny too, because once I started working at Dana, because I had to quit my first job. Once I started working at Dana, there's other people like that, and they're doing well as far as I could see. But they always then wanted to leave that job, typically. So, I don't know. But yeah, I really had all these thought loops going, or of like trying to be this sort of person, and trying to convince myself that, oh, other people could do it. It's easy. I'm doing it. It's easy, right? Oh, why isn't it working out for me? It's not that easy, but it should be easy. There must be something wrong with me. And then after so much time, I just cracked, and I was like, I was wrong. Okay, fuck. So yeah, it's a hard thing. But consider the fact that I decided not to go to college because, by all accounts, it appeared that college is just a big scam, and it's supposed to be like an idiot factory. It's just, to program you. What's the reason that literally everyone has to go to college? There's only so many specialized jobs. What's the reason for going somewhere, going to a institution and spending years of your life there, getting connected with all kinds of people who you'll just basically forget soon enough anyways, or maybe not forget, but it's not a community that's gonna last or anything. It's just for now. You have a sports team, you have basically a whole culture, and some people have classes that are like really, really difficult, and it's all rigor. Is it hard because the concepts they're learning are hard? Okay, some concepts are challenging, but a lot of people are just being really, really worked very, very hard on for something that's like, it's just a strict class. It's not hard concepts. It's not, some impossible ideas that only that take a ton of effort to grasp. It's just the course could be designed another way, but I think there's this big concept of like, if you go to college, that's social proof that you're a finisher. You're someone who, when you put your mind to something, you finish it. So, like, even if someone goes to like business school or something, I don't know, there's like this element of there's some unnecessary struggle here, but the struggle is the value, and I just couldn't understand that. Didn't make sense to me. And I think the other thing is, like, I didn't feel compelled to basically destroy my future with debt so that I can hopefully meet some pretty girls and set myself up to, to be able to attract pretty girls in the future. There is a sexual aspect to it, right? I think there's pride to this too, of like, okay, I'm gonna be better than everyone else and make the smarter decision but still, I think this occurred to me even at 19, 20 years old, and I still decided, you know what, I'm gonna go to community college. It's just, I think it starts you into your adulthood. Going to college starts you into your adulthood, like university. It starts you into your adulthood being comfortable with debt, and it's like you pay a huge tuition, but you also have to pay for textbooks and for your food and board, and it's like, I guess it depends, but I could also have gone to school in town, but it's not like I could have really studied easily at home. We did have a university in our town though, but I found out later too that I could have just applied and it wouldn't have been that expensive, but I don't know, I just find college, by the time I learned that, I was just totally repulsed by college. I found it just completely repulsive. And, I almost, but then I went to factories and suffered at factories. But for my suffering in factories, I was out amongst real people with mentalities that weren't hedged by an institution or Freemasonry or whatever. And, I got paid for my suffering. You know what I mean? Okay, maybe college, maybe it would have been suffering, maybe not. I couldn't understand why I should go into it. So then I was like, there's gotta be some way for me to, get ahead, basically, to make something, be able to make some kind of advancement, maybe buy myself, get a house, maybe I could devise some kind of get-rich-quick scheme, something, when you're, in your early 20s, I was, 19, 21 years old, and I was, thinking how I'm going to basically, squeeze the system somehow, which now I understand how, I think that's sort of repulsive, and it makes sense why I had so many difficulties, because I wanted to squeeze the most out without really giving anything. And, I think it's a little bit of a scam when you hear, ask what problems you can solve, when entrepreneurs say, what kind of problems can you solve, or, think about giving. It's sort of that gregarious Freemasonic mentality of, of appreciation, humility, and whatnot. I find that part of it repulsive. I think the part of it of you have to give to receive. You have to give to start the engine of manifestation. If you aren't giving anything real, if you aren't giving anything out of your internal energy, how can you expect to get that? That's just not how manifestation works, right? So yeah, just even the basic machinery of of manifestation of creating some future for myself, I wasn't doing. Now I think some people, or a lot of people, go to college and then they get out and they go through college and they get out and then they're like, oh shit, I need to give something in order to receive, and who knows how long it'll take them to figure that out. That being said, a lot of people it's just obvious to them, so yeah, no, it depends. We all land where we are because of who we are to some extent. I mean, not to say that, there's never any injustice in the world that knocks us off, what our path that we're supposed to go or whatever, but these things are a lot more obtuse than people usually tend to want to accept. That, if something goes wrong, why did it go wrong? What spiritual force is against you? For we war not against power. We war not against flesh, but against powers and principalities. So, people are struggling with the job, the people, but there's spirits behind things, and maybe even if you want to break it down to psychology. So, and maybe to break it down to a psychological truth, which I'm not so much into psychology or looking at it that way, but it is a way to look at it that is to some extent true. That, like, you know, there's things in your mind, like stories in the background or whatever running, that reproduce problems. So I would really, I've tried very hard to convince people that there's spirits behind these things. It's not all just, oh, you know, I don't have enough of a sense of self-worth, I need to work on my self-worth. To me, there's spirits, and until you recognize such spirits and work with the spirits, you're gonna have a lot of struggles with progress, because, you know, you can just look in the mirror and say, okay, you know, oh, you know, my hair is great, my teeth are great, you know, I've been working out, my physique is great. You know, you can use affirmations, you can do all these things, but a lot of people will still struggle. Why? You know, there's it's not just pure psychology and manifestation. There's other things to a lot of these things. That being said, personal growth, like true personal growth, takes time, and it can just take a while. You know, if you're able to make a leap in a year, if over a year you're able to, you know, significantly change your consciousness, that's magic. That's huge.